So I just got back from watching the Barbie movie for the second time. Shocker, you're probably thinking, considering how I'm dressed for this video. And I was pleasantly surprised at how much more I liked it the second time around. And I, you know, I didn't love the fact that a lot of it was highly politicized. I probably wouldn't agree with a lot of things that the makers and the writers of this movie believe, but I was surprised by how much I actually felt like they executed it well. And I specifically mean like the political things that they snuck in. I say snuck in, but like it's not that hidden. It's pretty overt. And the first time around, I was kind of just distracted by it because of how obvious it was. It was just like, oh, they're talking about the patriarchy again. Oh, they're talking about feminism again. And so the second time around, I was able to simply watch the movie and just listen. And I found myself liking the movie more. And my thoughts are not going to be very fleshed out because I'm just recording this video now while the memories of watching the movie are fresh in my mind, and I'm not editing this because I don't have time. But I I almost feel like they made the choices in the movie make so much sense for the characters that it didn't feel like, oh, they're just disguising this as a movie when it's a political agenda, which I'm sure it's plenty political agenda, but it didn't feel like it was ham-fisted into the movie to me. It felt like it made enough sense for the characters to be doing what they were doing that it didn't feel like it ruined the movie for me. And one of the specific things that I feel that way about is, so the big climax, the conflict of the movie is that Ken learns about patriarchy and he takes over Barbieland with it. Now, I don't love that this is the central conflict of the movie because I don't really think it makes sense for the overall arc that they're going for with Barbie, but Ken is a very weak example of a man. And they didn't make him weak to make fun of men, or at least I didn't get that impression. They made him weak because Ken is not a fleshed out character in the cyberspace of how Barbie is understood. Like, they don't do much marketing for Ken. They don't do much stylizing for Ken because little girls don't care about Ken. There's only a Ken doll so that Barbie can have somebody to go on dates with and somebody to sit in the passenger seat when she's in the dream car. So it makes sense that they characterize Ken the way they did because that's the way Ken is understood in the world of Barbie. So it makes sense that he would be weak in the ways that he is weak. He has no idea who he is without Barbie. And so what do weak men do when they feel that they're weak? They do bad things, like establish destructive, what's the word? Oppressive regimes. That's what weak men do. And I think I was more compelled by that turn in Ken's character because Ken is not an example of a good guy. He's not a strong guy. And it is likely that a guy who has weak character and weak self-esteem is going to get wrapped up in something like the patriarchy. Just look at all the red pill dudes on YouTube and people like Andrew Tate and his tween followers. This happens. People get radicalized. And that's not completely insane or extreme to put in a movie. It's actually incredibly topical because of people like Andrew Tate. The other kind of hyper politicized point that I wanted to address, as it's prominent in my memory in this moment, is the whole, you know, how it is to live as a woman under patriarchy. Now, I'm going to say right here and now, I don't really subscribe to the idea of patriarchy, or at least I don't think it exists in our current day and time. I think the issues that women, or that they talk about in the movie, are just the realities of living in a broken world with people with different worldviews telling women how they need to exist in the world, and they're all contradictory and not all of them are helpful. And I know, such as myself, some people, when they see the overt politicization of conversations like this in movies, their gut instinct is to just shut off and not listen at all. And I actually was pretty engaged with this part of the movie the first watching, and even more so the second time. And they're not wrong. I just think they're incorrect about the source. I think the implication of that being something that comes from living under patriarchy is kind of indirectly blaming men for those standards, and I don't think that's accurate at all. Like, what are some of the things that they complain about? Like, you have to be nurturing but not remind a guy of their mom. You have to, be a career woman but also be a mom, but not talk about your kids too much. And those are all very real standards that are put on women, and they're hard and they're confusing and they're contradictory. So it's hard to feel like you have all those expectations put on you, and those are real expectations. But are they coming from men, or a patriarchal system, or are they coming from having some friends who think you should focus on your career, but a mom who's pressuring you to get married and have a baby? And my dog's barking. Is it a patriarchal system, or is it just the reality of living in a world with broken, lost humanity and everybody giving everybody else different advice and different expectations to live under? But just because they think the source is coming from something that I don't think is real or don't think is accurate doesn't mean that they're completely wrong. And that's kind of the heart of this video, why I'm even talking about this, is I feel like it's really easy for us to, in political conversations, because people are getting so extreme these days, it's really easy to reduce a conversation on social justice or some kind of human issue, reducing it to its extreme perspectives and calling every discussion about a certain issue as poppycock. It doesn't happen. Every conversation that's talking about social justice is ridiculous because there are people who are extreme, who take it too far, and whose views are not based in logic or reality or truth. And I think that's a dangerous place to get into, because what's something that people who are really extreme tend to do that everybody in the center hates is when an individual person does something, then it's a statement about all of those people. Like a woman, doesn't shave her underarms and suddenly it's a statement about like beauty standards for all women. Or a girl has, breast augmentation because she wants her boobs to be a certain size, and her doing that is suddenly a statement about the standards on all women. All women are expected to have a certain, cup size, and she is perpetuating that because she's doing that, instead of it just being like a singular human decision. That's annoying. I think most of us who are not on extremes politically or socially, I think we all find that annoying, and we just have not talked about it. And we can start doing the same thing when we reduce all conversations of social justice or human issues to oh, if it's about a certain subject like racism or equal rights, it's ridiculous because I've only ever heard the extremes of those viewpoints. And we're doing the same thing as that other annoying thing when we do that, is we're taking a statement, we're taking a singular conversation or a singular character portrayal, and we're assuming that they're making a statement about everyone just because they're talking about a certain subject. We shouldn't do that. I also think we're doing ourselves and each other an injustice by shutting down when we hear something that we disagree with instead of appreciating the things that we agree with. It's really easy to hear somebody's opinion that you think is wrong and then completely shut down to everything else that they have to say. Whereas if you know, reserved your judgment and used discernment and listened to the rest of what they had to say, maybe you would find comfort in the fact that there are some things that you agree on. And that's kind of how I view the Barbie movie, is even though I think they were way too political in it and they said things that were not true about the real world, I also think that it was a really good movie. And it was clearly made by people who love Barbie and wanted to represent her as something good. And they weren't completely wrong about some things that women have to deal with and about realities of the human experience. And I don't think we should shut our ears to everything that something is saying just because one of them is bad. Because that completely erases our ability to listen to anybody who is not like us. And I think that's a dangerous place to be. Yes, use discernment. Yes, don't welcome in all influences, just for the sake of it, because that is dangerous and that is unhealthy and that can lead to confusion and distress. But don't close your ears to everything that the opposition has to say and everything that people disagree with you say, because then you're just widening the gap and decreasing our ability to communicate with each other in spite of the ways that we disagree. That's all I remember. That's all I have to say, I think.